Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bots and Billables. And
I
today I'm especially happy to have a guest with me, Tom Braegelmann. Tom, you may have heard of him before. I'll tell you why. But for those of you who don't know Tom, Tom is a lawyer. It's important to know. And Tom, I think you started your career actually in New York. Like you were in a New York law firm
mhm.
where you did IP, also
Oh
bankruptcy
yeah,
and various things. And then you moved to Berlin. You became an associate and later senior and off counsel at Dentons. So you were at Dentons Berlin.
and DLA
Then
Piper.
and DLA Piper.
Hmm.
And then you moved over to become the general counsel of one of the first AI companies in Germany,
Correct.
Leverton, that
Hmm.
did AI for especially real estate deals and due diligence projects where you were leading the legal team. And in this legal company, this also meant more than just like classic legal work. So you were seeing how people adopted AI. We're talking, I think, 2015, 16, right? This is like 10 years.
2017, and I met your colleague Micha there.
Here we go. And then you build your own shop where you are now one of the most renowned firms for fintech consulting. So if people have questions on the very bleeding edge topics, people consult you on, of course, AI, but also topics around the blockchain. I know that you've published on smart contracts and things that are new to the legal world. This is your domain and you're known for that. But I think most people in the German market and the European market know you because you're very vocal on this topic. You have written one of the legal books on AI, and you are basically, you can almost say an AI influencer in the legal space. I want to call you that because I think it's close to the truth. So you are very vocal about this. You give courses on how to use AI. You are a speaker on AI. You do workshops on lawyers on how to prompt. And if people talk about AI for lawyers, I'm sure you're one of the top 10 names that come up.
You're
Tom,
flattering
thank
me.
you very
Thank
much
you
for
very
joining me.
much.
You're one of the people that has watched this very closely because you're a nerd by heart and you have been curiously, meticulously interested in how this stuff works. We've been talking about this a couple of times. I love having you on the show. So great to talk nerdy things. And let's kick it off with one thing. Most people don't know this, but you are the one who made me interview people on the street. Because
I
when we
know.
had a panel discussion back in, I don't know, it was in January,
Hmm.
you said most people have ChatGPT now. I disagreed and I wanted to
I know
prove
you
you wrong. So
disagreed.
I took a mic and I walked around the streets of Berlin, New York, and also New York ballrooms to prove you wrong. And I think I succeeded on Union Square. I did not succeed in other circles where everybody had it and everybody was using it. So you were right on basically every lawyer in the US had used it or is using it. In Europe, it's not as dense. Not everybody has it,
Oh,
and
the
not
Europeans are just
everybody.
not admitting it. It's shadow AI all over. Come on, everybody's using it, and I'm not
Here
a
we go.
fan.
We go back. We go back to the streets talk. But
Hmm.
thanks for joining. So my first question to you is like, how have the last 6 months changed? Like, how do you see the market now? What's actually working in AI now when you look into the legal market?
Well, thanks, Michael, for having me on your show. I'm, in a way, an AI agnostic. I'm at heart just a bankruptcy lawyer, and I want to have nice tools that help me get to the facts quickly so I can give good legal advice. And if AI helps me, I'm happy to have that. And I see a lot of mass adoption of AI tools right now, for better or worse. People are using it. And that means a new kind of demographic of middle-aged or younger lawyers are using these tools. They have their expectations, they have their way of handling things. And I guess that's then sometimes interesting to know what people expect. We all know that lawyers sometimes love parts of their job and hate other parts, and then they always hope that some technology will do away with the loathsome parts or will at least shrink them time-wise. And that's the expectation here as well. It also surprises people is that if AI in certain areas is so good, they extrapolate and think, well, if it's so good there, it should also be able to do this because that's what you would expect from a human, but you can't expect
Right.
that from a machine. So,
Yeah.
um, so
Can you
that's where
share
we
some
are.
use cases of
Mhm.
areas where you say this has particularly well?
Well, some people are expecting that the machines, now that they're connected to databases, real good legal databases, are essentially doing the whole work, right? And putting the brief together, and all the sources are right, and everything is correct. Where I would think, how can a lawyer think that? Because lawyers do know what they're doing, right? Maybe the rest of the world doesn't know what lawyers are doing, but we are not only applying the law, we're before finding out the facts, what's even the case, right? If I don't have that, no AI can help me. Well, all these tools that we have right now, they don't have access to the world because the world is not a database. So I have to tell the machine this is relevant, this is not relevant. I have to go back to the clients. This kind of legal work, lawyers really work, like building a case, and not just for litigation, anywhere, is something where all of this can only be of assistance, and that's it. Sometimes of great assistance, like reviewing large reams of documentation, but that's it. Where it works particular well is matching. Like you've written something, you know how lawyers write, right? We always write something coherent. Like every memo, by the definition of its facts that it is supposed to analyze, is limiting the liability, because if the facts are otherwise, too bad for the facts, because my brief only addressed the world as I describe it in there. And then the problem is always lawyers write something and it might be great, it just might not correlate to reality, or the reality as it is written down in the document. And that's something where I find that industrialization of the legal profession will now take shape, because anything a young lawyer, for instance, writes can now be reviewed by any kind of AI within seconds, as to the question, does this correspond to the facts as it is in a file, right? Or as to the legal questions. Because young lawyers, or I shouldn't say starting lawyers, can make mistakes. They might misunderstand, or they might put emphasis on the wrong thing. And usually, up until now, partners review the young lawyers' work, and it takes hours, because they not only have to review their work product, they have to review the surrounding fact patterns and documents. And I see this now, that clients would ask, why was an initial review not done by AI, just to check whether this thing is going in the right direction or is totally missing the point, right? So I think that's great, because you can really weed out the biggest, worst mistakes that otherwise you might only find 2 or 3 days later if somebody finally picks this up. But of course, that's not solving all legal issues, and you can go home after 5 minutes because the AI has done the work for a whole week. It's going to happen.
Right. So you're saying you're using AI and you see the best use cases for AI today, where people are essentially using this as a smarter way to control and improve your work. So this is an efficiency support. This is giving you superpowers as a lawyer. But you don't see it in the self-service quadrant where you say it's going to replace lawyers. I'm going to ask this question because, of course, we're going to talk about the future of law, and people say like this is the end of it.
If people knew what their legal problem is, they wouldn't go to a lawyer nowadays. And they don't. They go to before the advent of ChatGPT, people were Googling, and they got answers, and maybe they were happy with this, and then they solved the problem even if they didn't follow the law. You know that legal conflicts can be solved
Yes.
without observing the law, right? Many disputes are settled without actually following the law, and that is always happening. And people have been using bad sources, or were uninformed before. I think that any old chatbot nowadays can help lay people, interesting term, as if lawyers were priests, be better than before, right? But the problem is, from a certain level of complexity on, it's a very boring argument. Oh, things are complex. You're always right when you say that. People will not be able to ask the right question. They think they have a problem under this and that, but it is something else. Non-lawyers have a hard time discriminating between, is this a criminal issue? Is this a tax issue? Maybe it's both.
Right.
Is this under New York State law? Is it under Delaware law? Do I have a problem
Right.
under German law? And people have a lot of, I mean, we're humans. We have wishful thinking, and we have something, as you know, we call in German, gefühlte Rechtslage, the felt legal landscape, which is different from the actual legal landscape, the actual way the law of the land is. So it boils down to the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I don't even know if it's real, but it's this psychological argument. People are even unable to recognize that they're unable to recognize what their problem is. And if that's the case, they can't even ask the chatbot the right question. And as long as chatbots don't have full access to your life, and maybe to your thoughts, they wouldn't know. I mean, that's, for instance, what ChatGPT gets at, because you have this memory function. The idea of ChatGPT on OpenAI is, in a way, you're building such a symbiotic relationship with ChatGPT. It has known you for 10 years. You have shared everything and all of your documents in your G drive. Then I guess an AI might say, well, Michael, 4 years ago you mentioned this and that, and this traces back to this issue and maybe there. So if you have total information awareness, then maybe, yeah, you might not need lawyers. But do we have this? No, because many things in life are not recorded. We don't know what happened. We have wishes, we have claims. We don't know if we can prove them.
No, it's very interesting. So you basically say that it's the unknown unknowns, or it's the parts that are yet to be discovered in the almost consultative approach of the lawyer to basically figure out what is missing to actually provide the proper advice. It's the medical examinations, like pre-discussion, to basically
Yes,
find out
and
what
add
is
to
the
this
original.
that law is not stable. Law is not stable because we apply it every day differently. The legislatures are making law, parliaments are making law. You have people moving here and there. So it is, again, it's kind of the easy way out is to say it's also messy, and then so maybe some AI can help you structure it
Right.
better, but it will not make conflict and misunderstandings go away.
Okay. I mean, you like that I like to argue that as the devil's advocate.
Yeah, oh yeah.
While I agree with you, actually, and I do think that the portion of self service advice that can be provided otherwise is probably not that high, I still wonder what percentage of this stuff will be, especially in the B2C direction, in the consumer facing world, will sort of disappear because people use it in a way they use Google, and they basically come to you pre-informed or not go to a lawyer anymore because they, especially the low risk quadrant, can already draft their letter to their neighbor on
And
their
what's
own,
wrong
right?
is everybody acts in a legal way, and most people never go to a lawyer. But I mean, if you see a sign on the street that you have to lower your speed, I mean, you're applying the law without a lawyer helping you.
Yeah, of
People
course.
act in a way, apply the law every day, and they did before. So if people were before
Yes.
going to Google or some other crappy resources on law, and they now have a chatbot that helps them draft it a little bit better, but what's not to like? But that's in a way stuff that would have never made it to lawyers anyhow.
No, I like it. And yeah, exactly, that's the point. Like, this is my favorite argument against the people claiming that tools like Do Not Pay or other services will kill lawyers, because these are services that only enlarge the market of law. You never went to a lawyer to, like, actually some people go to a lawyer for their parking ticket, but not many. And it's rare that you do. There's not a big market segment where people lose consulting because people are using services like that. It is actually making an area of law serviceable for lawyers now, or through technology, or however you want to call it. It's the same as the flight compensation things in the EU, where people got compensation. This was not done by lawyers before, and I call it fracking. You enable these use cases through technology. You don't take them away from lawyers. It's different.
And part of these use cases are just the self-defense. Like Do Not Pay had a big case because the government was actually exacting a lot of fines that were not justified. The same with Geblitz.de in Germany is the same thing. The government says, "Oh, Michael was too fast," and you don't know that the camera that made a photo of you was not in a way checked under certain standards, so it was not legally allowed to take a photo of you. And only a certain legal tech aggregator knows that another court already found that during that week that machine was in valid operation, and the city that made a photo of you that doesn't know or doesn't want to tell you is actually fraud. So when you weed that out, who could have anything against that? But that's in a way just reparation, repairing a legal process that's broken, right? Of
Right.
course, but in many other areas of law, the legal process by itself is not broken. It's just you have a conflict, like in corporate law. Usually, most corporate laws in the EU or in the US work fairly well. There might be areas that are not clear, but you can deal with them, and the professionals will do this. And still, you have conflicts, but not because the law is crappy or the courts are slow. It's because the world has company goes bankrupt or expectations are not met and all that. So it's in a way non-legal issues that are then where you apply the law, but the law itself is not bad. But Do Not Pay is solved just the government fining you without any reason,
Yeah.
right?
Tom, I have a question on this. We
Mm.
talked about expanding the market versus giving lawyers superpowers. You may know that my working theory is that comparable to the rise of the online libraries of the digital research tools in the 1990s, we now have the ability to read faster, write faster, and do research faster. And this basically enables us to be better lawyers, and everybody gets equipped with these tools, but they are an efficiency play rather than actually helping people to discover more gold. So in this picture, people are now buying better picks and shovels, but don't necessarily in all cases find more gold. My question is, like, and then there's the lawyers and the people in the industry that have a fear of gold disappearing, and that they need AI to defend themselves from the gold vanishing, or they need the picks and shovels to rather, take it from the other lawyers or defend it from people that are not lawyers from outside. So on the picks and shovels thing, like people currently use better picks and shovels, but where's the gold? Like, will we find more gold? Will there be more gold through picks and shovels, or will we use the picks and shovels to defend our claims against others with the same amount of gold?
Let me
Or will
think if
gold
I
eventually?
understand your metaphor correctly. By gold, you mean things, companies, clients that need legal advice for which they're
Yeah,
going to
legal
pay.
market.
Will the legal market be bigger?
Yeah.
Legal advice to be given for remuneration. Okay. Well, if the economy grows in general, there will be more need for legal advice, of course, right? So if the economy grows because we have technological progress elsewhere and more people are creating companies and all that, then there might be a larger pie. But there will not be more lawyers, at least in Germany. I don't know about the US. We have less and less lawyers. So if the pie is growing because of other reasons, and then there would be more legal advice to be given because the economy is growing. But a new tool that helps you to give legal advice more efficiently also increase the demand for legal advice. Not so clear. Probably yes, because there are areas that you can now address again, and it's profitable, or at least you're not making a loss on it. We know areas in Germany, like consumer insolvency, which the insolvency administrators have to do. The courts just give them the cases, and they're usually losing money on this because the estates of the consumer insolvencies are usually zero. They get a flat fee for this. So whenever you get a flat fee, you have a big incentive to be more effective, right? In a word, you get a flat fee. And you know, Germany has a lot of areas where you get flat fees or under some kind of a fee system. That's a great incentive to, in a way, be more efficient and faster. But then the question is, what do you do with the gained time? Do you have other areas to then provide legal advice? We know there are a lot of unmet needs, but we know that people are not, these needs are very often unmet because people can't pay. I shouldn't laugh. It's actually horrible for the legal service they would need, or politically, people are actually not willing to have people represented by lawyers because then they would enforce their rights. And that's so, yeah, where is the gold? It could mean that we can, in a way, legally assess more things. Is that a good thing? Even more law and lawyers everywhere snooping everything. Lawyers are not so popular. People would like to think they can get by without the courts and
Yeah.
without legal advice. And let's not handle this legally. That's, in a way, an ideal of many people, which we know only works because in the end, you can always rely on a court or, in a way, get help so you can be there. Will there be more legal advice? It's tricky. It might even partly be very difficult for law firms because a lot of busy work for which they could charge large flat fees or bill a lot of hours will shrink. It will still be there, but the amount of time will shrink, and then clients will get wise to this. And then the question is, how do law firms deal with that if they're the groundswell of regular busy work that they do, for which you do need lawyers, is still there, but is just done very quickly. Can they charge more for this or not? They probably will. It could be that the pie is not growing.
Yeah.
It could also be that the pie is not growing for other reasons because economies are not growing anymore. The German economy is currently not growing because of demographics. But I would think that people actually would need better and more legal advice. We see this a lot, but they can't afford it or they don't know that they need it. So we could maybe look at things where people get more self-service legal advice that is pretty good, and then they dare to do more things. Like people might found more companies or do other things or do things where they realize now I understand this tricky tax landscape, and then they create the need for legal advice that people can still afford. It could be that uh, even smaller law firms can take on more difficult and more work that larger law firms could do. Like,
Yeah, I
it
mean, look,
depends.
nobody has a clear opinion on this. Everybody's shifty at the moment, but it's an interesting discussion. And thanks for giving your estimate. Let's see how
I
this
guess
plays
many
out. And
clients want legal work to go away because it's annoying and couldn't just everything be clear. But that's not our fault as lawyers. That's how the legal landscape is.
yeah, I
Conflict, and
mean,
there's always things that are not clear. The idea that laws are perfect and they can be are clear is just not achievable. So there will always be need for legal advice. But because the legal profession is so old and the way how laws are handled is also so old, maybe it's there, but it might have a ceiling that it can't go through unless we start populating Mars and Moon and we need to go into very different other legal areas,
yeah,
or
we
in a
need
way,
space law.
yeah.
We need space law and more complicated law. Tom, you are one of the people who is close to how people prompt. You give courses on prompting. You were one of the people who actually started a whole workshop series on this.
I
But
was one of
compare a
the
little
first
bit.
ones who asked ChatGPT in German. It was funny. ChatGPT was published, and everybody was crazy about it. Oh, this is so great. And I thought, well, let's ask it in German. And then people asked me for a week, how do you make it answer in German? And I said, I'm asking it. People couldn't imagine that you could do this. I found that very interesting, right? And then the
Yeah.
people said, can you teach us how to do this? And I said, I'm just asking a question in German. It's not so tricky. And yeah,
This
and
is
it
how it
has been
started.
smooth sailing ever since.
So what's your give us your top learning? What makes a perfect prompt? What do we have to know to be really good? What would you tell a law firm team when they start working? What do they have to keep in mind? Let's maybe focus on ChatGPT for a second, just as a horizontal one.
My learning is from Ethan Mollick, and I think it's also true. Use this with the approach, I want to solve a problem, who can help me? Right? And if I want to solve a problem, I need to know what the problem is. Right? And maybe I don't know so much, so I'll ask ChatGPT, all right, I have a contract here, a draft, does it contain contradictions or not? Or I say, I have this issue here, what can we do with this? Can you give me advice, or can you help me find something in this regard? So I try not to see these machines as anything holy. They're not oracles. They're not, in a way, all-seeing. They can help me create texts that help me solve a problem, but I'm the boss, right? I always approach this as I'm in charge, and this is helping me, right? And I feel that people who are now starting this are not doing this. They expect they expect more. It's almost, I sometimes compare this to this expectation of a wizard or a genie, where people think, hey, I don't know, can you do this for me? That's not where these machines are, and I think they can never be, because the question is always, what's the problem, my dear user, right? And the problem is defined by the needs of our clients and my competency. If you come to me with tax law from, I don't know, Italy, I would say, I'm not even going to start ChatGPT asking it. I couldn't even assess what the answers are, whether they're correct or not. I would suffer from a heavy Dunning-Kruger effect. Um, I see that people are now adopting this more and more, and are expecting more than I would ever expect from this. I'm very happy with the small, quick wins. Like, write this better, right? I wrote, but then, Michael, people are different, not everybody is like you, and not everybody is like me. I like to verbalize a legal problem, and that helps it tremendously in prompting when you can tell the machine this is the problem. There's so much thought and so much research already gone into that. If you can, in a way, identify this is what I'm trying to deal with, right? If you don't know that yet, then that's tricky. Or if you can't express this, then it's also tricky. I, as a lawyer, get bored by those parts of the drafting that bore me. I don't like to do those. I'm very happy if a machine does that. I know other lawyers who are just very happy writing the whole damn thing, right? And they start in the beginning and they are very orderly. And I know others are like me. I do the interesting stuff, and then I realize, oh my God, I have to do the 3 pages of procedural nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Boring, right? And then it helps a lot when this is already there and written and it's correct, because I use the correct sources, and then I can fine tune, right? So again, a very simplistic answer. People are different, and depending on your personality type, really, these machines help you more or less, right? If you are a bit chaotic and need some help in the way structuring things, this is great. But if your writing is clear, for instance, for me, writing is hard, right? Writing is hard for everybody, but when I write, it's very often very dense legalese, and then I can put in more writing, and then after a while, it's good. It's not easy for me to start writing in a way, in a clear. I'm trained. It's clear enough, but it could be better. Others are very good at writing very clear. I admire that. They don't need Claude or any other chatbot to, in a way, clarify their writing, right? So you have to find out what you need. And then you realize maybe these chatbots are not really modern technology, but more a new way of how the world coaches you to work with your qualities and even out your deficiencies, right?
How has the market changed over the last 2 years, 3 years? Is everybody already in the game now, or is it still early days for some? Can you give a bit of a landscape? How many people do you think have adopted AI solutions and are working on this? How many people have started? What's the typical pattern in the market?
For instance, in Germany, I think that many lawyers are using AI. And you know how stingy German lawyers are. So they always ask me, can't I use free ChatGPT? It's good enough. And I say, you don't have data protection. You don't have all the rules for professional secrecy applying. If you put the data, client data in there, it's a crime. So why should you do this? And then people are saying, well, nobody's going to find out. And I say, well, first conflict with your client, they're going to snitch to the police, to the DA, and to the Bar Association. So that's one thing, which tells me that many people are actually using this. And the small firms have an advantage. They can do a regulatory arbitrage because they don't have a problem with insider issues. They don't give advice to corporations listed on the stock market. They know no data protection authority or any bar association is going to find out about them. And they're doing a lot. They don't like to admit it. And I'm not a fan of that. So I think adoption is much higher than you would think. But then good
You see the
adoption.
Claude stats, the Claude Anthropic stats. They came out a while back, like I think 2 or 3 months ago, when they published what people use Claude for. I mean, I have to admit, you use Claude for because you sometimes like the writing better, but I think there are not many companies built on top of Claude in the legal space. It's mostly dev stuff, and then most developers use Claude for the code. So in the stats, we didn't even come up. Like legal did not have a dedicated field in terms of.
I know.
I think a third was coding, and then
Yes,
legal wasn't even in the chart.
I know. It's kind of weird because Claude is actually the best for legal. I still think that ChatGPT is, even in '03, not writing very well. It's good at looking at documents and matching, like this does this, but the writing of it is meh. And Claude writes very well, where you would think it's so good. That again gives it away that it's AI writing. And which is also very good is Gemini 2.5 Pro. Is much better than ChatGPT. So, but adoption. In Germany, we have a couple of providers who, in a way, are then aligned with ChatGPT, with GPT-4 or Claude or something else. We have some international players like Legora and Harvey who are also on the German market. We have some German publishers who are now into this, who are then asking themselves, do they also allow upload of documents? I think that's on a fairly good way, and they are now spotting that the new users have a hard time recognizing hallucinations, so they're all putting in systems that are in a way not AI, but in a way better grounding, so you have no hallucinations. So all the quotations are real, but whether they fit, actually no AI can ever know. They're always doing a very good probability game, but whether a source really fits, that's where lawyers come in. The big challenge will be the integration into the awful legacy IT systems that all law firms have. And I know anecdotally from many mid-sized law firms that they usually hate their electronic filing system, but they don't want to migrate to another one because they think it's just going to be just as awful. And they know that these systems will have a hard time still entering some modern technology feature, be it AI or something else. And that's kind of a tragedy because that would mean you have a legacy IT system where your PDFs are in, and if you want to use any other AI system, you have to download PDFs on your desktop, upload them, and then in a way you almost mirror your database again into the other system. That's just starting out right now, and if this doesn't stop soon, then people will hate it because then you've created a very bad legal landscape. It's still fine because the technology landscape for law firms is bad anyhow. I mean, we're drowning in data. We're suffering a lot under Outlook's bad search system for email. Microsoft Word hasn't improved much in the last 25 years. The biggest feature still track changes. And Copilot is such a letdown, really, where it could be so good, right? But it is not. So you see these transformers, these language models, they're good enough. You don't need much more fine tuning and all that. You need to have your good sources, and you need to have very good grounding, and that's of course more of a licensing issue. And I have a question to you for that in a moment. But the integration into the general IT is tricky, and not just for law firms. You know, sometimes I have some clients from the real estate area in Berlin, companies who are essentially like property managers, right? They manage 28,000 apartments, or 2,000, or 3,000, right? They have then some IT that is specialized and wasn't really updated since the late 90s. And they have a lack of people. They see that they could be so much better in customer management with AI. And how do they integrate this? And And then, this stress of digitization. Can you really tell people, look, you have one login here, one login there, you log into here, and it's all browser based, and then you switch the documents? There's so much room for error there, which is not great, right? So we need some kind of better unified solution, which Microsoft
Yeah, I mean,
apparently is not willing to provide. And
well, they
another thing
don't
is,
like
of course,
lawyers have traditionally wanted their own tools. I mean, I understand that Microsoft has focused on the business use of Copilot, but to build a legal specific TMS matter management, combine it all together. I mean, they leave the space to the industry specific providers as they traditionally have, and I
yes.
understand why. What I don't understand is that the legal provider landscape doesn't innovate on the sense that you give people more user friendly tools to move in the clouds, and it's a bit of a national problem. Like there are tools around the world that work. It's just that the smaller the firm gets, the harder it gets for people to use up to date tech. It's
But
hard to move in the clouds.
the legacy IT or e-filing, I should say, what's the term in it in English? The document management software for law firms is tricky because the law firms have a hard time leaving this. They're locked in.
Yeah,
That lowers the incentive for any legacy vendor to innovate. And
yeah,
now there's this room for disruption because there's a new technology in town that saves a lot of time that needs to be well integrated. So we'll see a lot of friction there, and we see some legacy vendors actually improving, and that's good. So good times ahead in a way. But what is crucial is right now, law is not just clever thinking. I always tell people when I do these classes, and I deal with some AI as well. I mean, like software AI, software engineers, scientists, who told me a couple of times, Tom, all of this legalese that you have here, this writing, Claude or any or whatever could write much better than that. And I say, in law, it's not just crucial what the legal argument is, it's crucial who makes it. If I say a certain law has to be interpreted this or that way, everybody will say, he's a practitioner. It's loaded. We don't care. But if a highly respected law professor says it, or the German Federal Court of Justice, or the US Supreme Court, and it could be the same argument, everybody will say, that's so great, and finally we have legal clarity. And so, to do law is not only applying your own thinking, it's also finding the best arguments by the best authorities. And these are often very hidden behind paywalls or not easily accessible because they're still available on paper only. And then the question is, if you have such a strong tool like an LLM, how do you make it better with grounding that is reliable? I see that many vendors, AI providers, are better if they allow internet search, but I don't know how much an internet search will still be very workable if Google, with its AI overviews, right now killing the internet. Soon we might be down to official websites that give some data, or law firm blogs that might still be there, but if they don't do any more help you acquire much clients because people will just read the AI overview or ask the chatbot, that's also tricky. So how do we have, in a way, make sure that there's enough grounding there that any provider, like Writer or anybody else, gives not only a good argument, but correct legal advice? Because I, as a lawyer, I can not only just give legal advice in a way by telling my clients what I think, I have to advise along the lines of the high courts. If I give legal advice that is not corresponding or is contradicted by current case law, I have to tell the client, otherwise I'm liable. So I have to know that. It's tricky to know because it might be a lot or it might be dense. And how do you get to this? And it's not just in a way, I don't know, pouring 1 million German cases into a rec system and saying now the AI knows. That's just not how it works. And sometimes we have areas where there's no case law, so you need legal literature. And that would be my question for you, as you are also in this field. I guess you're licensing some stuff, but you will not always get a license from everybody. And as the legal market is so small, you will not be able to get from the largest publishers some kind of friend license as you get, I don't know, in these mobile smartphone wars, where in a way there you have these patents that are such a monopoly that somebody else needs to get a license under the law, otherwise they would be totally blocked. So will you try to have, will you engage authors or others who create a very good legal grounding so that you have some better answers, right? We know there are some vendors in Germany who are not the greatest legal publishers, but who give very pragmatic, have good pragmatic content that you can use for quick legal advice, right?
Yeah.
And they have authors. Are you building that, or would you consider that?
Would we consider hiring authors to provide legal literature that is embedded in Beeman and Writer?
Mm.
Good question. I don't think we have imminent plans to do that for the simple reason that our product roadmap is packed with things that are more pressing.
Mm-hmm.
But and then there's a strategic element to this, or almost philosophical element, which is, you mentioned this before, there's the element of trust. Like, I think we are going into an area where trust is key. You can go online and you will find an NDA, but there are still lawyers, and this is free and you can download it, but you will always need a lawyer to actually tell you
Yes.
where they can use it. So this element of trust into the expertise of the individual is what actually justifies the fee. Well, the asset, like the actual NDA, you don't care about it. It's free online. Nobody cares. The same is true with the publishers. You would argue that the publisher's asset is not, in many cases, the content. It is their brand and their, let's say, reviewed and controlled structure in having the right
Yes.
authors providing that content. So you
And
charge the brand with
having,
that.
right,
There's
having
a funny
having the
thing.
whole overview of it.
Right, right. And there's a funny, so if you then compare the publisher to the author and then the law firm to the publisher, there's an interesting, like almost like a value chain. Like there's a procurement, right? Like the client respects the lawyer in the same way that the lawyer respects the publisher, in the same way that the publisher respects the author providing the content. So you could argue, yeah, let's get the authors, get them to the tag, and then we don't need the lawyers or the publishers and leave out the middleman. Yeah,
Right?
so no, we don't have a
And
plan to do
and
that,
will
but
this,
I'm sure somebody will. And maybe this is going to happen in the future where you basically employ the lawyers directly. In a world where publishing becomes easier and faster, why not? There's a number of publishers that are like hybrid publishers. They're not technically like publishing
no.
houses, but they're
Mhm.
like closer to this. So, From Counsel would be one example, or the Loan Market Association, or people that provide you with templates. There's a number of outlets that are publisher like, but they're providing that. This is very close to this already. I don't know what the roadmap is. I'm not saying no, but I don't have plans to do that.
And the publishers that I know still have an ethos of covering everything. You know, there are areas of law that can't make much money in it, but they're still important, and they publish on it. And they even pay authors. And we know that the publish very often don't pay so well, but in certain areas they actually do pay well because otherwise there wouldn't be anything there. And that's also important. But then for law firms, that's tricky because they have their traditional electronic filing system for their documents, PDF, right? They have some proprietary legal databases. They have an AI tool, and even if the publishers would create their own tool, will it be as good as a freestanding AI tool? And how well will it integrate with the law firm system? So it's fascinating right now. We have a strong technology here, and how do we integrate it? Can we compare it maybe to electronic cars taking over? Because the old cars with a motor that were running with gas are very complicated, and electric cars are much simpler. So I guess it's a good time to found a new law firm that has something that where everything is integrated.
Okay. Tom, thank you for famous last words. You defended the profession there. Thank you very much for joining the show. This was great. We talked about many topics, and I thank you on behalf of all the listeners and watchers, and have a good rest of the week.